Yeah, the Texans cruised out to that 23-7 halftime lead, and Dan Campbell was on the sideline with his head in his hands. As Stroud seemed like he was locked in, but he really struggled in the second half, completing just 39% of his passes with a total QBR of 1. Okay, remember that's out of 100. It's kind of rare you see that. Houston could not score in the second half, lost 26-23. Dan, the QBR of 1 in the second half. How did the Lions defense keep Stroud in check?
And I feel like you saying, Dan, QBR of 1 was a little bit of a
talking about
shot
you.
there.
No, you took it the way you wanted to take it, Dan.
Tell us how you relate, big dog.
A lot of times, Dan, it's just your personal story.
Well,
I don't think she meant that
game.
about you.
I think the top 2 head coaching candidates this offseason should be Ben Johnson, who's the offensive coordinator for the Lions, and Aaron Glenn, who's the defensive coordinator for the Lions. I think the way that he crafted his man-to-man matchups in the second half and took away some of the things that the Houston Texans offense was having success with in the first half is a big deal. The way that he had eyes on CJ to make sure that the legs weren't hurting him while also playing that man coverage physical at the line of scrimmage and not allowing some of those extracurricular or added plays while the coverage was still holding up was a big deal. And then making sure that the rush was tied to it. Making sure that that rush never got past them. They just tried to restrict the pocket with CJ. I thought the way that he went about not being over aggressive in their man coverage, but also committing to it while not exposing their back end, a massive kind of first half to second half change.
Yeah, it was a performance in the second half that I only appreciated watching on tape, because watching on the TV broadcast, I was like, what is Stroud doing? Like throw it, or it's the window's too tight, or he's not open. And then on tape, you see, oh, the coverage is really, really good. Man coverage in particular. I mean, Brian Branch, you can't say enough about him. Carlton Davis was huge in this game. I will say, though, it wasn't entirely the Lions' defense. Stroud has to play a lot better. And what was frustrating, or I guess worrisome to me, is we have seen him this year struggle with insane pressure and also guys who can't get open. Obviously, he doesn't have Steph Diggs or Nico Collins. But in this game, there were also moments where guys were open. I'm thinking, of course, Tank Dell. Or even when there was a clean pocket, he was rushed. And I worry that the bad habits created from that stretch of games might be infiltrating him when the situation is actually a lot better.
And this leads right into missed opportunities. You talked about the interceptions, the pass that he throws into the end zone. You have a wide open wide receiver. Carlton Davis is on the backside, but he floated it instead of driving that football in. You get the terror route that Carlton Davis picks off early on in the game, and he leaves that football inside. Another thing that I thought was really good by Aaron Glenn defensively was on those boots, they always tried to keep CJ Stroud from getting totally outside of the entire defense, so he wasn't getting opportunities to run into those throws. And I think when you throw off the rhythm of CJ Stroud, the way that this team was able to do in the second half, that's the way you do take away his superpower, which is a quick release and ultimate accuracy. But as Mina said, we've seen that deteriorate throughout this stretch of games.
Okay, well, here's the reality. CJ Stroud is such a rhythm and timing player and can be an elite playmaker from the pocket. I've talked about this so much, but haven't had to really talk about it recently. This idea that everyone always thinks that being a playmaker is, and just being elite in general, is like scrambling around and like running around for like 10 seconds and then throwing a dart 35 yards. Like we think that that's being a playmaker, or avoiding a sack and then ripping off a 15-yard run, right? Like that's a playmaker. But CJ Stroud is great from playing from the pocket and can be such a timing and rhythm quarterback. The problem is that he does not have the team to help encourage that, right? He doesn't have the team and the O-line that helps enhance what actually can make CJ Stroud incredibly special. So you're taking away his special. So when you're saying that he needs to be better, it's just not entirely fair, because you're taking away his comfortability and then expecting him to kind of overcome that. And I don't know if that's necessarily CJ Stroud's game. And again, you're also saying like, oh, well, are some of these bad habits affecting him now, even when he's in a clean pocket? No, it's that he doesn't trust his pocket. It's almost like a PTSD type of thing. I don't think that it's a habit, but it's more of a PTSD, right? It's like if you get in a car crash and it's real bad and you're real scared, right? It's like the next time you're driving and it's raining, you start to don't trust yourself. You start to not trust the car. One time I was driving and my car completely spun around, and actually flipped, kind of crazy. And for like a while. every time I got in the car and I was just making a left turn or a right turn, it felt like the car was spinning, even though it wasn't. That to me is where CJ Stroud is right now. He's clearly so uncomfortable, and you can't blame him, right? I mean, it's just the pressure and the attack that he gets is just through the roof. And I stand by this. One, they don't have the weapons, and two, I stand by Bobby Slowick not supporting him enough to be able to help get him the ball out under these situations, to get it to be more of a quicker executed offense. And so again, you're pretty much setting CJ Stroud up to essentially keep hitting that reset button on the PTSD train, for him to constantly feel uncomfortable. When he starts to feel comfortable, it's like, don't worry, we'll remind you why you should feel uncomfortable. And this is his second year. He doesn't have 7-8 years of established experience where he can now just really kind of shoo that off. I'm like, yeah, sometimes my car is going to spin out, but it's all good. I'm good. Don't worry about it. Move on to the next one. He doesn't have that length of time. So I just don't really think it's fair. And again, that first half, so much of it was because of the turnovers where they were getting short field. And they were able to execute that and be opportunistic, which was awesome. It was great to see. And then when that was not necessarily the name of the game for them offensively, they really struggled. And I just don't put that all on CJ Stroud. I'm not acting like CJ Stroud's been playing perfect great ball and everyone's to blame but him. I'm not saying that either. I'm just saying that this is just a team that is a mess right now. They just are. They're broken. I don't think all of them as a whole are doing a good enough job to overcome the deficits that they have, right? There's just so much uncomfortability. There's uncomfortable play calling, even from Bobby Slowick. And again, I had been praising Bobby Slowick, and I've also defended him, saying, listen, I don't know if he has the experience to be able to overcome injuries as well. In terms of calling a game. Also, I think what made Bobby Slowick a good coordinator was, and I actually just talked about this in a previous video, not Texans related, but this idea that some coordinators are there to just actually really put the team in a position to succeed, right? They're really great at designing plays, game plans, right? Pulling the strings, play calling within a game, but they're not there to actually help the quarterback grow and evolve and improve. And again, that's what makes like an Andy Reid, a Sean McVay really, really special, because they're able to do both. They're able to really fix fundamental issues of a quarterback, right? Hide some of his weaknesses, maximize some of his strengths, and have the elite game planning, and have the elite play calling and making changes and adjustments in the middle of a game. And I'm not so sure that that's Bobby Slowick necessarily. Right? I mean, it's just too soon to really actually honestly know. Or at the very least, it's a part of his coaching ability that maybe needs to be developed. So that is where CJ Stroud, from my viewpoint, is at a disservice right now. So, again, we're looking at this and it's like, look at CJ Stroud, and I understand why we reduce games to just the quarterback, but I see issues all over. And I've been sounding, I don't want to say the alarm, that's too strong, but like kind of waving the red flag throughout this season. And again, I took a lot of heat from Texans fans for saying that, like, hey, yeah, they won, but like this didn't really feel good. This wasn't really a good win. I think they had this and that. And a lot of Texans fans agreed, and some Texans fans were like just downright like, again, you're a clown, you don't know what you're talking about. And now we see why some of these issues have really come back to haunt them. And again, I also think that they do deserve the grace because of some of the injuries that they've had. But at the same time, it's tough when this team had such high expectations. Again, and I compared this to the Philadelphia Eagles of 22. Unfortunately, though, they faced injuries, and so now they're more like the Philadelphia Eagles of 23. And it doesn't mean that they're just destined to fail this season or that they can't turn it around, because I think they will, especially when they get healthier and get some pieces back. But it needs to be more than just that. You can't expect that you're just going to bring Nico Collins here and then boom, this offense is going to start humming along. It'll definitely be significantly better. And I think that'll make CJ better. It'll make Bobby Slowick better. It'll make the O-line better. It'll make the offense better, right? Like, you'll definitely have that domino effect, not unlike we see when A.J. Brown is in the lineup with the Philadelphia Eagles versus when he's not in. But there's still other fundamental changes that need to happen. You still need to see more growth from CJ Stroud, and Bobby Slowick needs to do a better job of helping CJ Stroud get into rhythm, right? Set him up to be able to be more consistent and resilient in these moments. Because to me, it still feels like CJ Stroud, more often than not, is left on this island to just, what I always say, you just call a hike and you take a bunch of steps back and it's like, all right, best of luck. Please try to figure something out. And it's just like no quarterback can succeed under those circumstances. They just can't. And it happens too regularly for the Houston Texans, and I find it problematic, quite frankly. So I'm curious, and I keep waiting for them to kind of make some changes. And granted, going up against the Lions is going to be difficult. They're a great team. They're a top team in the NFL. They're actually, I think they're the best team in the NFL right now. So it makes sense that you're going to struggle, especially when you're not full strength, right? Like the fact that you need to be able to beat this team, you're most likely, if you're going up against the best, you're going to need your own team to be full strength. Because if you can beat a team when you're not even full strength, they're probably not the best team then, most likely, right? Like, it's just the way it's going to be. So this was always going to be a difficult game for the Texans, but I do think that they showed a lot of resilience. They did hang in there. This game did get absolutely crazy with all of the interceptions from both sides. I mean, it was just wild, right? There was 4 interceptions in just the third quarter alone, I think it was. And it was just a wild game. I mean, it was just a wild game. There's only so many takeaways from a game when you force that much turnovers. But it is not the best precedent to set, to get all these turnovers from the Lions and still lose, right? Still lose by a field goal. It's a tough loss, right? Tough loss when Goff has 5 interceptions, offense stalled, especially when no short field, right? That was my main summary of this game as a whole, more than anything. And yeah, I think at the minimum this will be a good learning experience and a growth opportunity for the Texans, but make no mistake about it, they absolutely have a lot of work to do. I'm not jumping off the ship of the Houston Texans, and I'm certainly not jumping off CJ Stroud either, because I still think that this team can be special. I still believe that CJ Stroud is special indeed. It's just they got to figure some stuff out. There's just no arguing that. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the Houston Texans and CJ Stroud? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I'd absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.